I grew up in Alwyndaw, South Carolina, which is about 20 miles going north, right up the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. It's a little small, out in the country town, a lot of family. It's right on the water, which plays a huge part into the whole Gullah tradition that I grew up in. There was such a wide variety. There was definitely gospel and spirituals. But then on the other side, my older sister and older brother were listening to a lot of pop and rhythm and blues and funk and everything from the 70s. So there was a lot of that going on. And eventually, what we think of now is like soft rock music. And so those were the primary ones that I listened to. Oh, wow. I started off playing piano first when I was 3 years old. And then I went to the violin, and then eventually the trumpet. And the trumpet is the one that I think most people see me playing on a regular basis. But I also play organ at a church. And I was a middle school band director, so I know how to play a lot of those instruments. So it's quite a number, but the primarily ones are definitely the keyboard instruments and the trumpet. I started composing music and making my own arrangements of songs. I think I was probably in my early 20s, so probably about close to 30 years ago. And I wrote just a simple little song something that came to my, to my thought process, and wrote it down and expanded on it a little bit and shared it with some friends of mine, and they added their 2 cents to it. And I thought that was pretty cool. And so that's kind of how I got into composition. The majority of the time when I am writing a song, the first thing that happens for me is just the initial idea, and that could come from a number of different places. It could have been driving down the road and hearing a rhythm on the tires or something like that. But then that eventually leads to a little melody. And for me personally, when I think about some of these melodies, I start to think about my good friends that are musicians and their personalities and how they could contribute to the song. And so a lot of times when I write songs for my jazz groups or for any other sort of band or thing that I'm participating in, it's usually with a specific person in mind on this instrument and on this instrument, and all of that comes together, and that's what really brings out the best of the song, in my opinion, for me. My upbringing was full of music, definitely starting with church. And where we live in the low country of South Carolina, there's definitely the Gullah tradition. And hearing that specific rhythm and being at church and seeing everyone participate, in the music, whether it's hand claps or stomping of the feet or the singing, but all of those rhythms that would just mix in, it's definitely the basis for about 99% of the music that I write. So that's a tremendous force, in my creative process with regards to composition. First time that I heard a string quartet, I was in elementary school, and we had members of our symphony here, the Charleston Symphony Orchestra. They did a performance, and it was sort of like a young people sort of concert, and they played some pieces for us. And I remember the fact that I had just started playing the violin, I was in the fourth grade, and so I thought it was cool to, see these, older folks, on this big stage, performing. And they played some songs that we were familiar with, so that made it a little bit more special for us that we could recognize it. And then later on, just growing up and going to music school, getting a little bit more into classical music, uh, and actually, when I graduated from college, I came back home and I became the product manager of a record store. And in this record store, I would see all of these. I was responsible for ordering and receiving all of this music. And we had a huge room that was devoted to classical music. And we had a number of people that would come in and they would ask us for, specific groups, one of which was the Kronos, And so I was very familiar with this marvelous group. Where we live in the Low Country, we have a community that's the Gullah community. And within the Gullah community, which stretches from the southern part of the southern coast of North Carolina down the coast of South Carolina and Georgia to the top of Florida, you have all of these islands. And on these islands, you had former enslaved West Africans, and they had a specific sound to the music and that they sang to each other, whether it was in the form of a spiritual or a kids game. And Gullah really is an informant to many other styles of music that we have in the world today, whether it's rock and roll, whether it's rhythm and blues or country or folk music. You could really trace a lot of the roots of those specific genres back to Gullah. And so when I spoke with David about it, and we had a fantastic conversation. I got really excited about the opportunity to not only work with this fabulous trend-setting group, but just the thought of writing a piece that had all of those elements and having it preserved in the way that they are talking about and the way that they had been presenting it over the past few years, and for everyone to be able to have access to it. That was just a no-brainer for me. I was just ready to go right at that moment. Actually, I sat down for, this may sound funny, I sat down at the piano for a long time, and I just sort of closed my eyes and just sort of played a little bit, and just whatever came out, I was recording it, and whatever came out just would come through. And then I would go back and listen to it and try and extract whatever. But one particular day, I was actually out in my backyard cutting the lawn. And I don't know what it was that specifically happened, but I just literally was in the middle of the yard and I stopped. And this idea came to me, and I ran back into the house and just sat at the piano and just started to plug away at it. And the next thing I knew, it was nighttime, and my wife had come home and said, "Are you leaving the lawnmower out in the middle of the yard?" And it had just started to develop a little bit and develop a little bit more. And it was just one of those particular moments, really, that the main part, the main two parts of the piece really came together. And it was just a matter of sort of refining it, for the quartet. Oh, the rehearsal was special. First of all, it took me a second to just get over the fact that I was listening to the Kronos Quartet play something that I wrote, which was just, something, special for me. But then listening to it and hearing them play it, I was like, wow, that's fantastic. Here are a few other little tidbits that might give you a little bit more background. And we talked about how the folks that were in these prayer bands that I was sort of celebrating with this song Testimony, the age of them, and how they were important members of the church, how they communicated their life stories at the church. The tempo in which they did was very meaningful. The force in which they sang it with, the soulfulness of which they sang. I told them that in this rehearsal, and just sort of described what I saw when I was a little kid. And I think that just made all the difference in the world, because the next time through, when they played it, you could tell that they had latched on to that vision that I had just given them. And so that just jumped the piece a whole nother level, which was just incredible. And it carried through the performance as well. There are distinctive rhythms from the Gullah community that's very much on display with the cello and the viola and the second violin part. There's the specific rhythm of them stomping, through the performance. So there's definitely that Gullah rhythm that's very unique. Also, just in how they presented it with their melodies, like I said before, with the expression. It's a very expressive piece, because those prayer bands that I based this off growing up, these folks were expressing very much in a very compassionate way their feelings of what they had either gone through, and how they felt that the Lord at that particular time had brought them through whatever trials and tribulations, and they were expressing their love, for that. And so definitely the rhythm and expression is something that I hope that our younger generation of musicians will get from this piece. For me, creatively, being a jazz musician, there's always that aspect of improvisation on the bandstand. The band that I play with now is called Ranky Tanky. We are a quintet from here in Charleston, South Carolina, and Ranky Tanky combines all of the elements of genres that you know of, like jazz and blues and folk music and gospel. And you hear elements of all of that go with the Gullah sound of the Low Country, which is extremely important, and very much prevalent still to this day. And when you mix all of those things together, it does create a unique sound. And we've been very fortunate to have been very successful so far, and people have enjoyed what they've been hearing, and so we hope that it will just continue. Be passionate. Be passionate about what you play. Be passionate in your playing. Be passionate in practicing. Be passionate in your performance. And don't be afraid to express yourself with your instrument. That's the whole basis of performing arts, being expressive and just that passion, of your inner being, and letting everyone to see and hear, your expressiveness and your personality. So just be passionate about it.